There are things you have probably already done, in the first days after losing someone close, without knowing that they could make things harder, not for you, but for them, for their transition, for the journey their soul is going through right now, in these very days, these weeks, while you sort through closets and can't sleep in the silence of a house that suddenly feels too big. Edgar Cayce, in dozens of readings, spoke about what happens to the soul in the first weeks after death. And he spoke very specifically about how the living, without ever meaning harm, can make that transition more difficult. Not break it forever, but make it heavier, longer, more painful, for the person you love more than anything right now when they need your help, no less than they did while alive. Stay until the end, because the last point, the one almost nobody talks about, might be exactly what's happening in your house right now. Let's start with a story that made one researcher of paranormal experiences completely rethink how she worked with grieving families. First, don't turn their room into a museum you're afraid to breathe in. A woman from Pennsylvania lost her son, 23 years old, a car accident. She closed the door to his room on the day of the funeral and didn't open it for 3 years. His slippers stayed by the bed exactly where they were. A half-finished cup of coffee dried out on the desk. She explained it simply. I couldn't go in there, couldn't touch anything, because touching it would mean admitting he wasn't coming back. In the 3rd year, a medium came to see her, not at her request, but at her sister's, who watched her slowly fading next to that locked door. And the first thing the medium said, before knowing any details, was, "There's a room in this house holding someone in place. Not a ghost, a feeling. Thick and still, like the air before a storm that never moves." Cayce described exactly this mechanism in several readings given to grieving families. He said that excessive preservation of a physical space, turned into a frozen monument, creates what he called an anchor point, a place the soul keeps feeling pulled toward even when it's already ready to move on. Not because the place holds it by force, but because love, frozen into permanence, says to the soul without words, "Stay, you're still needed here, in this form, in this room, exactly as it was." That woman from Pennsylvania, after talking with the medium, did one simple thing. She didn't clear out the room entirely. That would have been the opposite extreme. She opened the window. For the first time in 3 years, she washed the bedding. She put fresh flowers on the desk instead of the dried-up coffee cup, and she said out loud into the empty room, "You can go. I'll be all right." A few weeks later, she said that for the first time in 3 years, she slept through the whole night without dreaming that she had failed to save him. This doesn't mean you need to clear everything out on day one. It means that the attitude matters more than the action itself. Go into that room, breathe there, speak out loud, change something small over time, move a book, open a window, replace dried flowers with fresh ones. Show both yourself and them that life, including their part in it, keeps flowing rather than freezing forever in 1 second of goodbye. Second, don't let grief turn into endless crying tied to one specific spot. A man from Ohio, who had lost his wife after 39 years of marriage, sat every evening in her favorite chair by the window and cried there, sometimes for an hour, sometimes 2, sometimes deep into the night. He told his pastor, "It's the only place where I feel like she's near." The pastor, who had seen dozens of similar cases in his ministry, noticed a strange detail. Every time the man sat in that chair, his dog, an old Labrador who had been more attached to the wife than to anyone else in the house, would start pacing restlessly, whining, staring at the bedroom door. Every single time. At the same hour each evening. Not at any other point in the day. Only when the husband began his ritual of grief in that chair. Cayce described exactly these kinds of moments as one of the most common ways the living, without any ill intent, out of pure love, make harder the transition of the one they've lost. Intense, repeated, unrestrained grief creates a powerful emotional signal that the soul, not yet fully separated from its earthly attachments, feels and responds to, trying to comfort, to stay, to help. Instead of moving toward the peace Cayce described as the natural next stage of transition, the soul gets stuck trying to soothe the very people it left behind. Animals, according to many mediums who work with grieving families, often respond to exactly these moments of frozen, repeating grief, because they are sensitive to the energetic fields a person creates without even noticing. This doesn't mean you shouldn't grieve. Grief is natural, and suppressing it is dangerous in its own way, so that's the other extreme Cayce warned against too. The difference is in the form. Conscious grief, fully felt in the moment but not locked forever into one ritual in one place, is different from grief that becomes a daily cage, for you, and according to Cayce, for the one you lost as well. Third, don't speak to the one who has passed out of panic or desperation. Cayce and most experienced mediums agree on one thing: the tone of how you speak matters more than the words themselves. Speaking from panicked fear, "Don't leave, I can't survive without you, please come back," creates, according to Cayce, an energy of attraction that literally asks the soul to remain in a state of unfinished transition. The soul that loves you hears that fear, and part of it wants to stay to comfort you, even if that contradicts what it needs for its own progress forward. A real case described by a practicing medium who had worked with grieving families for over 20 years. A widow who every night before falling asleep whispered into the dark the same phrase over and over for months: "Don't go too far, I won't survive this." She described the feeling in the bedroom as heavy, not frightening, just heavy, as if something exhausted was always there, unable either to stay or to leave completely. When the medium suggested she change only the words, not the ritual, not the timing, just the phrasing itself, to "I love you, this hurts, but go where you need to go, I'll be all right," the widow said that by the third night she already felt the difference. Not relief from the grief itself, the grief remained, but a sense that something in the room had finally relaxed. This isn't indifference. It is the deepest act of love you can offer in that moment. Letting go not out of detachment, but out of genuine care for the path your loved one still has to walk. Fourth, don't try to force contact through spirit boards and untested rituals. This is the point Cayce spoke about with particular caution, almost a warning, unusual for his typically gentle tone in readings about the afterlife. He didn't deny the possibility of contact with the deceased. He himself, in trance, repeatedly described such crossings and considered them real. But he drew a clear line between calm, open, love-filled contact and attempts to force it through tools that open a channel with no filter on what might actually come through. A group of teenagers in a small town in Indiana used a spirit board several times in a row, trying to reach a classmate who had died a month earlier. Each time the board answered, moving, spelling out names, giving details. But the details grew stranger each time, less and less like the boy they had known, until they became openly unsettling. The local pastor, the frightened parents, turned to explain it much the way Cayce would have. The door had been opened not by calm love, but by feverish teenage curiosity mixed with grief. And through a door like that without discernment, something that simply knows how to wear a familiar name can slip in. Spirit boards and similar tools, according to many mediums, function like a door with no filter. A loving soul of someone close to you might genuinely answer through such a tool. But a door opened in panic, boredom, or pure curiosity can also draw in something that has nothing to do with the person you lost. Lower, disoriented entities that will gladly present themselves with a familiar voice simply because the door was open and the person asking didn't know how to close it. Cayce called intention the filter for whatever comes through an open channel. A calm, loving request for a sign is one thing. A desperate, repeated, forced attempt to summon a specific person at any cost through a tool you don't know how to control is something else entirely. Fifth, the one almost nobody talks about. Don't treat every nightmare, every anxious thought, every unexplained bout of feeling unwell in the house as the presence of the deceased demanding an immediate reaction driven by fear. A family in Colorado, after losing their father, spent the first month after his death interpreting absolutely everything: a flickering light, a creaking floorboard, a strange dream had by any family member, as a sign requiring an immediate ritual, an immediate check, an immediate interpretation. The daughter wrote down every sign in a notebook. The son became afraid to sleep alone. The mother stopped turning on the hallway light, convinced her father preferred the dark. A house that should have remained a place of memory and peace turned within a month into a space of constant nervous anticipation, where every small sound triggered a brief wave of panic. Cayce said that genuine signs from those we love almost always carry a sense of peace, not mounting anxiety. If a house is filled with constant panicked attention to every small detail, that, in his words, speaks not of the presence of the deceased demanding to be decoded, but of unresolved, unsettled grief in the living, grief that needs to be processed differently, not through endless vigilance and fear, but through calm acceptance and a gradual return to ordinary life. The family in Colorado, when they finally sought help from a grief-focused family therapist, received one simple piece of advice that changed the atmosphere in the house faster than any ritual could. Stop looking for signs and start simply living. If a sign is real, it will find a way to reach you even without a notebook and constant waiting. Now, what to do instead of everything listed above? Because a list of prohibitions without direction leaves only anxiety. And anxiety is exactly what Cayce asked people to avoid most of all. Cayce and mediums with years of experience working with grieving families agree on one simple principle: create calm in the home, not frozen tension. Light a candle not as a ritual of desperation, but as a simple act of remembrance, calm, warm, without anguish. Speak out loud, calmly, with love, without demanding an immediate answer. Change the space in the home gradually, not all at once and not never. Find a middle path between a locked door and hastily getting rid of everything. Allow yourself to grieve fully without hiding from it, but without building a permanent home for yourself inside that grief either. And if you feel a sign, receive it with peace, not with a feverish need to get another one right away. A house where someone has died is not a cursed place, and it is not a museum. It is a place where love continues to exist in another form, looking for a way to stay close, unburdened by fear and unchained from one frozen second. What you do in that house now determines not only your own path through grief, it also, according to Cayce, helps or hinders the path of the one you love, in their own transition toward the peace they earned, just as much as they earned your love all those years. Write in the comments, was there something in your home that you now, after this video, understand differently? Not so you can feel frightened in hindsight, but so that maybe tonight, for the first time in a long while, you can let both yourself and the one you lost finally have a little real peace.